3 years, 2 months. The 11th Eclipse Games had become something else entirely. What had begun with 400 contestants had been reduced to 80. Entire factions had risen. Entire factions had fallen. Alliances had shattered. Legends had been created. And above all of it, one name remained untouched. The giant scoreboard floated above the city skyline as it had every day for years. 11th Eclipse Games. Year 3, Month 2. Contestants remaining 8,400. Kill. Leader, Lord Rain. 304 kills. The number barely seemed real anymore. 304. Nearly an entire eclipse worth of contestants. Gone. Most contestants now measured time by how many days had passed since they'd last seen Lord Rain. Not because they wanted to find him, because they wanted to avoid him. The cameras panned across the aftermath of the third official challenge. The challenge had been dubbed the Fallen Sky. 20 contestants had been placed into a massive skydiving tube, a device made for artificial skydiving. Every 5 minutes, the air pressure changed, making players have to adjust heights and balance every time while trying to fight and defend. Contestants had spent 3 hours jumping between walls and floating objects made for cover and projectiles if used properly. Most died from the challenge itself, killing each other within the first shift. Others died from objects thrown at wrong angle but connecting at the right force against a player. And, unfortunately, several died from Lord Rain. The cameras eventually found him, floating comically in a position that resembled him just casually laying on his side. His guitar rested in his hands whole. He played casually through the slaughter. His beard had grown even longer. His hair looked completely feral. The audience had long stopped pretending he looked sane. Lord Rain looked up at the scoreboard. 304, then looked at the nearest camera. You know. He sighed dramatically. I was really hoping for 305. The commentator groaned. The old man pointed at the camera. One more, another point. Just one, another. But no, he spread both arms. Everybody dies before I get there. The audience laughed nervously. Lord Rain casually descended to the groan as the air tube came to a stop after the challenge, slung his guitar over his shoulder, then wandered away, singing. 304. The broadcast faded. The challenge recap ended. The commentators moved on. And across the galaxy, people went back to their lives, including Kenny. Reach Prime. Kenny sat with Celine on a couch overlooking the city. Aurora sat on the floor drawing. The little girl hummed happily to herself. The challenge broadcast disappeared from the screen. Kenny sighed. 304. Celine shook her head. It's insane. Do you think he can actually win? Kenny stared at the dark screen. I don't know. The answer surprised even him. Years ago, he would have said no instantly. Now? He wasn't sure. A loud crash interrupted the moment. The front doors burst open. Pines practically fell into the room. Lyra wasn't far behind. Both looked breathless, excited, and for once, terrified. Kenny immediately stood. What happened? Pines pointed behind him. Come. What? Now. Lyra nodded. Seriously. Another nod. Right now. The urgency in their voices was enough. Everyone followed. The group rushed through hallways, past security checkpoints, past laboratories, past containment zones, until they finally reached the research wing, the largest observation laboratory on Reach. Scientists crowded the room. Researchers stood around monitors. Everyone looked excited. The moment Kenny entered, conversation stopped. The lead scientist immediately approached, the same woman who had overseen the first testing. She looked exhausted and ecstatic. Kenny. The woman smiled. I think we did it. The room froze. Nobody spoke. The scientist activated several holographic displays. Genetic structures appeared. Complex diagrams rotated slowly. Most people had no idea what they were looking at, including Kenny. The scientist noticed, then laughed. Right. She pointed toward a rotating model of a dawn fruit. The answer was the seed. Kenny frowned. The seed? The scientist nodded. For years, everyone focused on the fruit. Another gesture. The nutritional properties, the enhancement effects, the leaves, the emotional healing, the neurological synchronization. But nobody studied the seeds. The displays changed. Microscopic structures appeared. The scientist pointed excitedly. The seed contains the original genetic blueprint. Silence. She continued. When dawn fruit grows, another pause. The fruit enhances, the leaves connect. But the seed preserves, it remembers. The room became fascinated. The scientists smiled. The seed stores the original biological template of the plant, and through enough refinement, we discovered it could encourage damaged genetics to remember what they were supposed to be. Kenny blinked. So, the scientist nodded. It doesn't force a cure. It reminds the body what it used to be. The room fell silent. That was beautiful, and terrifying, and brilliant. The scientist took a breath. We're ready. Nobody spoke. Everyone knew what she meant. The first test, the first true attempt, the first real cure. The observation room lights activated. The now familiar containment chamber sat beyond the glass. Inside sat the mutant child, watching, waiting. The little creature looked calmer than it had months ago, yet still clearly different, still altered, still trapped. The scientists entered. The treatment began. The seed-derived serum was administered. Then everyone waited. Minutes passed. Nothing happened. Then, the child began shaking. The room tensed instantly. The shaking intensified. Bones shifted. Muscles contracted. The process looked painful. The scientists monitored everything carefully. The child cried, then screamed, then collapsed. The room went silent. Several terrifying seconds passed. Nobody moved. Then slowly, the child opened her eyes. Not monster eyes, human eyes. The room collectively inhaled. The transformation continued. Hair didn't suddenly grow back. Scars remained. The years of suffering remained, but the mutation was gone. Completely. The little creature that had entered the room no longer existed. A little girl sat in its place. Tiny, fragile, completely bald, terrified. The child looked around, confused, lost. Then she started crying. Real crying, human crying, the kind only children can do. I want my mummy. Nobody moved. The room collectively broke. Scientists wiped tears away. Lyra looked away. Pines rubbed his face. Darius stared silently. Celine was already moving. Several scientists stepped in front of her. Your Majesty, wait. Another. We don't know if... Celine stopped, turned, and gave them a look. The room immediately shut up. The Queen pointed toward the crying child. That's a little girl. Nobody argued. Nobody dared. Celine walked straight into the chamber. The door sealed behind her. The child immediately scrambled backward, terrified, cowering in the corner. Then Celine reached into her pouch, removed several dried dawn fruit leaves, lit them. The familiar smoke filled the room, the same ritual, the same process, the same healing. Everyone watched. Celine sat quietly, waiting. The smoke drifted, the connection formed, and suddenly, she understood. The girl's pain, the girl's fear, the girl's memories, the endless years trapped behind her own eyes, watching, unable to stop herself, unable to speak, unable to scream, unable to help, forced to witness every horror, every attack, every death, every meal, every nightmare. The realization nearly broke Celine. Kenny saw it immediately. Tears filled her eyes. Because he had been right. The mutants weren't controlling themselves. They had been prisoners the entire time. The little girl experienced the connection too. She saw Celine, not as a queen, not as a ruler, as a mother, a protector, a safe place. The child hesitated, then ran, straight into Celine's arms, and cried, hard. The Queen held her tightly, rocking her gently. Nobody in the observation room spoke. Eventually, Celine looked through the glass. The expression on her face left no room for debate. She's mine. Silence. Another pause. Until her family comes back. Nobody argued. Nobody wanted to. The decision felt correct. Hours later, Aurora entered the residence, curious, excited. The newly cured little girl sat beside Celine, nervous. The moment Aurora saw her, she smiled. Hi. The little girl blinked. Aurora sat beside her. The silence lasted approximately 2 seconds. Then Aurora gasped. Wait, another gasp. You're a girl? The little girl nodded nervously. Aurora looked thrilled. I always wanted a sister. The room exploded with laughter. Even the little girl smiled. And for the first time since her cure, she laughed. A real laugh. The sound brought tears to Celine's eyes. Kenny watched quietly, then looked toward the others. Toward Pines, Lyra, Darius, the scientists, everyone. It's time. The room became serious again. Kenny looked toward the laboratory, toward the research teams, toward the future. Mass production. Silence. Another pause. Mass rehabilitation. The room nodded. Plans immediately started forming. Distribution, treatment centers, extraction teams, containment, recovery. For the first time in years, the people beneath the mountain had hope, real hope, and somewhere far away, while Lord Rain wandered Eclipse chasing records and singing murder songs, the first victims of his greatest crime had finally begun finding their way home.